In this screencast, I'm going to cover CSS's important declaration. So what it is a way to override styles in case you get into some trouble. So inside our book code, under Chapter 3, Lesson 2, we have simply a black background on a web page. And we created that background simply by using the asterisk to say that everything gets a black background. But if you take a look here, we have a class title that's more specific. And that's what we mean by specificity. Nightwing up here is more specific because it has a title. And therefore, notice how the background on this is silver, but look at the font color itself. Well, the font color in this case reads black, but the H1 tag will override the color as gray. Watch what happens when I remove important here. So in this case, as it did in the first video this week, the class will override the H1 tag. However, if I want the H1 tag to override the class, I can write the exclamation point and important, and it will. Now notice how if I hit refresh now, it comes back as gray. So this important declaration it's a good thing, and we have to be very cautious about it. And that's because if we have limited amounts of time to do our project, as you might see in the professional environment, often when we can't get something to change by using traditional mechanisms, by like giving it a color gray, that means our CSS somewhere is overriding our colors. So in this case, we see a title that's a class, and we saw that that overrode the H1 tag. So what we might be tempted to do is throw an important there to automatically make it show up so it looks right. But that just cures the symptom, not the disease. So what can happen is that you lose control of your CSS. If there are too many importance in there for not the right reason, your CSS is not going to look clean. It'll be very difficult for other people to manipulate. And using this is sort of a way to get out of trouble, and it isn't always the best practice. Now in this week's materials, I've referenced a nice article on this, and it goes into it very clearly about what the problems are with using CSS as important. Because it's a way to get things automatically to appear the way they want to, without paying attention to the real underlying issues in the HTML structure and the corresponding CSS styles that should be fixed in other ways. So when large web projects happen, which you'll probably be working on someday, these are bandaging the issues. So read this article. It'll make a heck of a lot more sense, and you have to think about websites out there that have just thousands and thousands of lines of code. And if you haven't had me as a teacher before, I often show this because it's one of my sites where the amount of CSS was just amazingly extensive. This styles/main CSS, and I'll be honest with you, I think that there's going to be a few cases in here where I actually used the important declaration to get out of trouble because I had such limited time to develop this. But this is literally 19,000 or 13,900 lines of code, and I'm sure if I look for important, I see numerous declarations of it. So that tells you, I can tell you right now that my thinking of this when I put this in here was not logical. It was not considerate of people inheriting the code after me. And part of it was because I was rushed a lot. But there is a right way and a wrong way, and I would say to only use the CSS important if you absolutely positively need it and you understand why it's being used, and it's not as a stopgap fixer for what we're trying to achieve.